Hey, Lions Nation! We're back with another exclusive video bringing you all the latest news about our beloved Detroit Lions. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss anything about the team. Now, let's get into the news. The city learned to recognize the sound before it saw the sight. That whistle in the November wind that spiraled down Woodward and curled through the steel ribs of Ford Field, as if the building itself were drawing a breath before announcing something it had waited years to exhale. By afternoon, the light over the river turned the water a cold sheet of chrome, and the news moved like a ripple that became a wake, crossing from downtown to Corktown, through the suburbs built on grit and auto steel, all the way to the fields north where kids were running out routes against the paling sky. In a season already painted in bruised blue and hopeful gold, a new name hung in the air and landed with the thud of inevitability. STEFON Diggs is a Detroit Lion, and the ball will not touch the ground the same way again. For weeks, the signs had been quiet, coded, tucked into throwaway lines and camera angles. Fans dissected the way a mechanic studies an engine by the vibrations it sends through the frame. Ben Johnson's play sheets got a shade thicker without adding a page. The splits for the Z receiver in a handful of concepts crept tighter by a step. The boundary choice route, a staple of timing and option reading, appeared more often as window dressing that teased a future not yet announced. Jared Goff began looking to his right on three-step concepts just a half-tick sooner. A meaningless tell if you weren't counting frames, everything if you were. Amon-Ra St. Brown kept doing everything that has come to define his name. Leverage, toughness, hands soft as cold smoke. And yet when he stepped off the field, he sometimes stood at the edge of the practice line, eyes narrowed, hands at his hips, as if seeing the geometry of a route tree that no longer ended where it used to. Jameson Williams, a flare of jet fuel when the ball is in the air, started working the dugout of his brakes harder, powering his inside foot as though someone had asked him to threaten the post with more violence. So the safety had to commit and leave the seam what it wanted to be, lonely. Sam Laporta caught passes until the sun had given up. Penei Sewell leaned in his stance like a tiger at rest. Frank Ragnow took shotgun snaps and whispered the line calls like a liturgy. The pieces had been waiting for another piece that was really an ignition key. STEFON Diggs arrived like he has always arrived, decisively, with the minimal fuss of a man who prefers production to punctuation. He came through the internal hallways with headphones hugging his ears and a single duffel over his shoulder, the way Slick Trouble might slide through a chorus into the hook you didn't realize had been borrowed from a familiar song. The first step onto the turf belonged to memory, because everyone in football remembers the way a field feels when a star sets foot on it for the first time. The hush, the fractionally taller grass, the echo that turns into applause. Diggs didn't cue the sound system. He didn't need to. He walked to the sideline, set the bag down, and caught the first ball that Ben Johnson tossed him as if to say, this is ordinary. This is exactly what it should be. This is Tuesday if Tuesday were destiny in midseason pads. Detroit's passing game has leaned on timing married to force, a clean pocket welded from technique and will, the ball out before the danger arrives. The precision of a car line pushing each piece into the place it must be so the next piece fits. Goff has built a kingdom inside the quiet of his feet. 5-step, hips strong, shoulders level, eyes that move defenders with a librarian's shushing rather than a conductor's flourish. With Amon-Ra, he has accuracy that turns completions into expectations. With Jameson, he has flight, the vertical tease that makes coordinators sleep poorly and corners curse the length of the field. With Laporta, he has a pressure release that bends zones and punishes greed. Add Diggs, and the entire architecture tilts into something more layered. Because Diggs is a route run inside a route, a decision nested in a counter, a receiver who steals back leverage you thought you won against him so subtly you don't notice it until the replay shows your hips turn to glass. Practice revealed the plan in the way football always does. Repetition that becomes ritual until it's too fast to parse. Diggs lined up as the boundary X, reduced split, hips slightly closed, right foot back, and he ran a 10-yard speed out without ever looking like he was running an out. He sold glance with his eyes alone. The corner squinted inside, and the ball was out on time like a secret handed across a crowded street. Next snap, they stacked him, let him be the point man in a short bunch, motioned him across the formation to a reduced alignment, and ran the dagger concept that has lived in Detroit's playbook for years. Clear out by Jameson to the post, a deep dig behind it. Laporta dragging under to threaten the void left by frightened linebackers. Only this time the dig didn't drift, it snapped. Diggs pushed to 14 with the cruelty of patience, stuck his foot in the ground like it struck iron, and the air around him turned to a vacuum that swallowed coverage. The ball arrived a breath later, chest high, eyes forward, and he turned without slowing like a half-truth told with such conviction it becomes reality. On the next series, they moved him to the slot, let Amon R.A. take the outside, and inverted the roles that had defined each man elsewhere, because nothing says domination like refusing to be predictable even when your talent could overwhelm without the deception. Detroit's staff has been stubborn about balance, about making the pass a complement to violence in the run game, about demanding defenses earn the right to pass rush by surviving the body shots of duo and mid-zone. STEFON Diggs doesn't undo that, he weaponizes it. On play action from heavy personnel, with Sewell caving in aside and Decker boxing out the sun, Diggs acts as the justice of patience served. He wins the intermediate stem on a post-cross combination that looks like a Sunday stroll until he throws the slightest shoulder feint and turns grass into an exit sign the safety can't reach. The Lions have always hurt teams with that shot concept out of condensed alignments, but too often it required a perfect throw to a window created by scheme. Now the window grows because Diggs's craft adds inches to the lanes the way a chess player gives himself time by choosing sequences that lock the board. It isn't that he is faster than corners who have 4.3 burned into their biography. It's that he is earlier, perpetually ahead of the tackle that tries to meet him, the ball arriving into the exact space his body promised a step before he promised it. What changes first is third down. Third and 6 used to be 4 verticals with a mirrored choice underneath. Read the leverage, punish the linebacker, play the percentages. Now it becomes a cruel multiple-choice test where every answer is right for Detroit and every answer is wrong for the defense. Put a safety on Diggs. He uncovers like a magician pulls a scarf from a knot that never existed. Play man and bracket him. Amon R.A. eats your short leverage alive with option sits and pivot outs. Jameson sells the one thing you can. Never concede. Depth. And Laporta cruises into daylight with the look of surprise he must fabricate for the cameras. Call zone and dare Goff to dissect you? He has been doing that since the leaves were greener, and Diggs understands how to sit in your blind spot long enough to make your courage feel like foolishness. The ball comes out in under 2.5 seconds, the chains move, the stadium roars, and somewhere in your booth your call sheet grows less helpful because there are only so many coverages you can call when the opponent can beat all of them with simple answers that look like complicated questions. Then the red zone bends. Ben Johnson has always kept a section of the book for condensed space trickery, rub routes that flirt with legal contact like a dare, orbit motions that flip leverage, delays that punish tacklers who chase ghosts. What he gains with Diggs is not novelty, but inevitability. Back shoulder fades are no longer hope, they're a signature. Slant flat becomes a grad-level seminar because Diggs knows how to elevate on the slant without giving the corner a hip to press, and how to delay just enough on the flat to catch a linebacker leaning. Motion across the formation to diagnose man or zone has greater meaning, because when Diggs feels man, he counts steps like a metronome, and when he feels zone, he becomes a mirror that reflects the void. The safety starts shading his way before the huddle breaks. The backside safety tilts that way too, even if he swears he isn't. And suddenly the run game is a numbers advantage without adding a blocker. David Montgomery gets a crease you can drive home through. Jahmyr Gibbs slips into the C-gap late and emerges in the end zone with the ball held aloft like a secret he's letting you in on because he feels generous. The psychology of this sport is often misunderstood by the people outside the locker room who believe talent and grit are all there is. The Lions have had grit in surplus. They have devoured adversity and turned it into charm. Talent has been rising like the mercury of summer. What Diggs brings is prestige, the aura of inevitability that follows players who have closed games for years on third and impossible and in January air that bites. When he walks into the meeting room, the young receivers sit a little taller. When he finishes a route in practice and motions with his hand for it again, a tiny twirl of the index finger that means reset. The quarterback complies without words because they both know what excellence costs and how it is paid. Jameson Williams watches Diggs's feet in the first 5 steps of a deep curl and notices that the gain isn't the plant. It's the pace change 3 steps earlier, the way you tell a corner a light lie with your shoulders. Amon R.A. grins at something in film because here is someone else who treats a route like his own private argument with a defender's assumptions. Laporta sees how Diggs sets up the safety on a seam read by not looking at him at all, a world-class lesson disguised as indifference. Across the lake in the wintering cities of the NFC North, coordinators pour more coffee and pull last year's tape and realize how irrelevant it feels. The Packers can match up physically, but bracket over the top and watch Detroit punish light boxes with a running game that has the cruelty of patience. Roll the dice in single high, and Diggs turns the nickel's inside leverage into a flaw again and again. The Bears have length at corner and the ambition of rebuilt youth. And yet when they try to press Diggs, he treats the line of scrimmage like a puzzle he solved years ago, hands replacing hands, feet sliding through the spaces between intention and action. The Vikings will have their say because they always do, but a shootout now involves the Lions adding yet another archer to a quiver already full. In conference rooms with windows facing gray skies, the conversation shifts from how to beat Detroit to how to survive them long enough to get to the fourth quarter with choices left to make. The first home game with Diggs in uniform doesn't begin with fireworks so much as with precision. The opening drive is a blueprint. Under center, motion orbit, split zone look, Goff boots left, Diggs leaks late to the right flat, and snags the ball as if it had always belonged to him. 9 yards with 2 steps after the catch to twist the nickel into a missed tackle. Next play the Lions go fast, trap inside to keep the front honest, and then they line up in a tight bunch with Diggs as the point. At the snap he stems outside, bounces off a legal rub that looks like an accident and is nothing of the sort, and breaks to the corner as Goff throws to grass he knows Diggs will claim. The ball is placed like a promise and caught like a debt repaid. The second quarter features the shot everyone came for. Play action, Laporta selling the shallow crosser to occupy the linebacker, Amon R.A. pressing the intermediate dig to freeze the strong safety, and Jameson exploding down the opposite seam to pull a corner wider than he wants to go. Diggs sells a post with the cheekiest of glances before snapping to the corner, and by the time the free safety realizes his angle is wrong, the ball is already in flight, a parabola that ends with white gloves and a chorus that drowns out thought. On the sideline, Dan Campbell, who believes in kneecaps, in fight, in belief that tastes of bandage and grit, pounds a fist into a palm and nods as if to say this is not fancy. This is football. This is what happens when you commit to a vision and the pieces fall into their proper groove slots. Before we move on, take a second to drop a like and subscribe. That way, you'll stay up to date with every exclusive Lions update, and you'll even have a chance to win an official Detroit Lions jersey. Let's keep going. But the beauty is not in isolated fireworks, but in the way everything composes a larger song. The Lions have a drive late in the third where nothing travels farther than 12 yards, and it feels like a clinic in inevitability. Diggs on a whip route turns the nickel's inside leverage into a joke. Amon R.A. sits in a spot with the body quiet of a statue until the ball hums to his chest. Gibbs splits wide and runs a choice that wrong-foots a linebacker with the mere suggestion of speed. Laporta drifts away from contact like he is floating downstream, catches a pass at 9, and turns it into 14 because balance is a superpower. By the time they nudge into the red zone, Detroit doesn't even need flair. Montgomery hammers behind Ragnow, and Vitae and Sewell like justice, and the score goes up like a number you saw coming and still could not stop. The impact ripples off the field in ways that matter less to scheme and more to myth. Children at recess begin calling for a Diggs path when they draw routes in the dust, which in their language means any cut that makes a friend fall down laughing. The guy who runs the corner Coney Diner off Livernois adds a dagger with fries to the chalkboard, 2 chili dogs, and a pile of shoestrings that somehow taste like third, and 7 conversions. On the radio, callers argue about whether Diggs's best trait is his releases, his late hands, or the way his shoulders lie. Nobody is right, everybody is. The local high school offensive coordinator stays up late and draws new ways to clear space for his best kid by stealing mannerisms he's noticed on Sundays. And on Fridays, the kid starts winning slants with a step he borrowed from someone he's only seen on TV. The city doesn't need saviors, not anymore, but it recognizes craftsmen. Detroit has always belonged to people who make things and make them well. Diggs fits because he is a maker who uses space and time as his raw materials. The conversation inevitably turns to January, because once a team becomes something more than good, the calendar gets heavier. How does it travel? What happens in wind? What if a defense decides to play bully ball and find out what your precise machine does when hit with a hammer? Detroit has answers that begin with the line, Sewell's feet, Decker's angles, Ragnow's brain, and continue with the run game that unspools the clock and drips it onto the turf until opponents understand what slow suffocation feels like. The passing attack with Diggs doesn't resist the weather, it adapts. In wind, the routes shorten and the timing tightens. Diggs's mastery shows most when the ball must be out now, when a 6-yard stick must be 12 after the catch, because that's what the sticks require. In noise, he uses nonverbal cues and late eyes, so the corner never gets the early tells that poor receivers bleed. In cold, his hands remain warm because he catches with the frame of his body and the delicate deception of fingertips that never flash too soon. Ben Johnson, always a student of how to create easier pictures for a quarterback without dumbing down the questions for a defense, finds fresh pages cascading from what Diggs can do out of motion. Fast, four wheels become more lethal because the horizontal stress Diggs puts on zones feels like a theft of ground the defense believed it owned. The return route becomes a weapon not because it's new, but because his sell on the speed out is a sermon. The shallow cross that used to be a placeholder becomes a score when he feels the pursuit behind him and hitches upfield at exactly the spot where the pursuit must turn and slurry its feet. Goff's passer rating into intermediate windows climbs because those windows exist for fractions of seconds longer. The deep ball success rate increases not only due to Jameson's gravity, but because Diggs runs the mirrored concept from the opposite side in a way that robs help defenders of their instincts. Football is a game played by giants who move like dancers and crafted by minds that see chess where others see checkers. Diggs turns Detroit's board into endgame positions where every exchange benefits the Lions. Opponents will adjust, because they always do. They will spin safeties late and disguise coverage shells. They will mug A-gaps and force hot throws to landmarks that feel less comfortable. They will try to hit the receivers at the line and make them earn space with bruises. The counters are already in the drawer. Detroit will respond with bunch stacks that outlaw clean punches. They will use motion to put Diggs on the move, so press feels like trying to jam a shadow. They will leak Gibbs to the flat with malicious timing, so the hot answer punishes aggression with speed that looks like laughter. And when the picture gets muddy, Goff will throw to the trustworthy shoulder because Diggs has turned late hands into a weapon that denies corners the chance to undercut. There is a play late in a game that feels like a summary of everything the addition has changed. 3rd and 5 near midfield. Up 4, 2 minutes and some seconds left, everyone in the building knowing the consequence of one more first down. The defense shows 2 high, mugged backers, a nickel cheat that says we might bring 6, or we might just show you 6 and bail. Goff calls for motion. Diggs shifts from outside to a snuggled slot near a Monterey, the picture of condensed menace. The ball is snapped, and it's a quick game concept dressed beautifully. Double slants outward, Laporta blocking and releasing late, Gibbs leaking. But Diggs does a tiny thing, and that tiny thing wins the day. He takes an inside jab with his left foot that sells a slant so completely the nickel's toes point where the ball will never go. Then he pivots through the man like a door swinging on oiled hinges and shows a back to the quarterback. That means I'm out. I'm open. I'm where the chains are. The pass is a dart. The catch is soft. The yards belong to destiny. The stadium knows how to breathe again. When the locker room quiets after victories, the sounds are the same. Velcro, laughter, music, but the conversations have a new accent. Young receivers talk about leverage like accountants talk about numbers. Goff mentions the way Diggs's head never gets ahead of his feet. Coaches discuss option trees with the certainty that comes from having a player who can prune the branches in real time. Dan Campbell smiles a crooked smile and talks about toughness as if it were a language, and in his telling of it, crisp routes and relentless blocking are dialects of the same tongue. This is not about star worship. It is about adding a craftsman to a shop already staffed with artisans. The trophy case at Allen Park has been waiting for dust to be disturbed by events that belong to the future, tensing the present into action. With Diggs in Honolulu blue, with the blend of precision and power that his presence unlocks, the Lions' passing game becomes less a tactic and more a thesis about how football can be played when patience, talent, and intent align. In the city, murals bloom. Some capture Diggs arcing toward a corner pylon, ball caught with hands like answers. Some are more abstract, patterns of lines and loops that feel like route combinations overlaying maps of Detroit neighborhoods, as if a corner post could curve up Grand River and a whip route might spin at Eastern Market. Kids try on the word separation the way they try on new sneakers. It fits them. Bartenders watch the fourth quarter with the door propped open to let the roar from living rooms spill into the street. In barbershops, men gesture to explain a return route to boys, and the boys correct them by explaining how Diggs set up the return with foot fire at the stem. The city folds the new name into its accent and moves on, as cities do, but knowing something material has changed. There will be Sundays when the ball schemes the turf, when the timing is a beat off, when a defender guesses right and guesses early. Nothing in this league is guaranteed except the resilience required to earn the next snap. But there is also the weight of inevitability that comes from assembling tools built for the job at hand. With STEFON Diggs part of Detroit's constellation, defenses must live in a world where no answer eliminates the questions, where the choice to take away one threat births another, where the equation of bodies in space and time resolves always a fraction in Detroit's favor. The aerial game doesn't just gain yards, it gains gravity. You feel it in the way corners respect cushion they do not want to grant. You see it in the tilt of a safety's shoulders before the snap. You hear it in the hush before the ball leaves Goff's hand and the exhale after it lands where it was promised. The wind off the river will get colder before it warms. December makes honest men of teams who pretend. But if you walk down Woodward after a home game now, you'll hear the city humming a new melody beneath the old beat, a rhythm no less industrial for being elegant. It sounds like the clipped shuffle of feet at the top of a route. It sounds like the thrum of a stadium when timing becomes theater. It sounds like a passer and a receiver who see the same picture before it exists. It sounds like something a place that builds things would understand immediately, the joy of a mechanism assembled so well it disappears into the work it does. And somewhere inside Ford Field, under lights that turn the field to a stage and the stage to a memory machine, a ball will spin in a tight spiral toward a set of hands that have been practicing for this moment since childhood, and those hands will close, and a city will stand, and the game will tilt again in a way that feels, more than anything else, like a future arriving exactly on time. We bring you the latest Lions news every single day. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. And of course, drop a comment below with your thoughts on today's news. Your voice makes a difference for Lions Nation. See you in the next video.